One component that can completely change our understanding of the story, and one person that we should pay very close attention to, is the narrator. The narrator is the person who tells us the story. He is the author of the story. So it is time for me to remind you, please read and read your text again, even if you already read it 10 times. Do it again and pray. To start, read your story and pay very close attention this time to the narrator. Look for quotation marks. That's not the narrator. Everything outside the quotation marks is or should be mostly the narrator. A little side note, we do have some presuppositions as we are approaching the text. First of all, God is always right. Otherwise, he's not God. And second of all, the narrator is also always right. He's almost like God. He has magic powers. He can see behind closed doors. He also knows what people are thinking, even if they don't say anything. So in a sense, he's kind of like God. He's looking at the story from above. He already been there, done that. He saw the story and he's telling it us like God. So the narrator is always right. And the final, also very important thing, which can sometimes deceive us, the good characters, the good people, are not always right. They can be wrong. Just because we like someone, just because he's a good character and he loves God, that does not mean that everything he or she says must be right. So let's look at an example. This time I chose another example to change it. It's found in John chapter 4, verses 1 through 9. And I again emphasize that I chose this text at random. It does not have clear beginning or end. I just picked a part of a story. And this is what it says. Let's read it together. Therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself was not baptizing, but his disciples were, he left Judea and went away again into Galilee. And he had to pass through Samaria, so he came to the city of Samaria called Sychar, near the parcel of the ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. And Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, being wearied from his journey, was sitting thus by the well. It was about 6 hours. Now there came a woman of Samaria to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Therefore the Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, asks me for a drink, since I am a Samaritan woman?" For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. So in this story, if you look at this story, who is the narrator? I highlighted all the text that is given, presented to us by the narrator. The quotation marks, "give me a drink," and second one, how is it that you, etc., are the direct speech. They are not the words of the narrator. He's quoting, right? So everything else outside of that is the narrator. So now is your turn. Read your story and listen to what the narrator is telling you about this story. The narrator can reveal you some secrets. The narrator can tell you some interesting details. The narrator can interpret the story for you. For example, if you look at the story we just covered, he tells us that Jesus was not baptizing, though we may think that he was, but it was his disciples. He also explains to us some of the traditions. He tells us that Jesus is thirsty. He tells us he was on the way. He reveals us certain backgrounds about the relationships between the Jews and Samaritans. So think about the narrator. Rethink your story through the eyes of the narrator. And for the assignments, I want you to submit 3 points. First of all, copy the entire text and highlight all the parts that are written by the narrator. This is the easy manual labor. You can just go to the text on internet, copy, paste, and highlight the narrator. Number 2, does the narrator step into the story and inform the reader about things which the characters in the story do not know? In other words, is he giving you certain things that the people cannot see, the people cannot hear, but you, looking from above at the story, you know it because of the narrator? And finally, does the narrator explain the story? Sometimes the narrator steps in and says, and this means such and such, or he steps in and he says, and this was done because. Those are the explanations.